quiet achievers to the tireless campaigners, 8 special hunter citizens from all walks of life are featured today in the Queen's Birthday Honours List.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.
Though each recipient has made quite different contributions, the quality that linked them today was their cheerful and untiring enthusiasm. There were the quiet achievers like Neil McInnes. Despite being born spastic, he's attended church youth camps for 24 years, 14 as camp cook. Sister Mary Tarsisses, former superior of the Martyr Convent, was remembered for her services to nursing and hospital administration. Father Arthur Bridge received the OAM for services to youth, with his anti-drugs campaign as coordinator of the Hunter Life Education Centre. Justice Michael McHugh, appointed to the High Court this year, was honoured for his services to law. And in sport, 3 locals who've devoted lifetimes to their game. Bill Elliott, 17 years secretary and 4 years president of Newcastle Australian Football League. And how do you feel about your award?
Tremendous. Tremendous. I never had an idea.
John Mo Wilson, 14 years president of Newcastle Rugby League.
I'm receiving recognition for something that I had got a great amount of enjoyment and happiness out of.
Tom Locker, still president after 22 years for the Newcastle District Cricket Association.
I think it's tremendous. I'm so grateful, and yet I try to be humble about it, but it's so very nice.
And they all had their own amazing tales to tell. Dorothy Hill, still caring for helpless animals at the age of 85, was rewarded for 30 years as an RSPCA inspector and 15 caring for the elderly with the Meals on Wheels.
I once went to a person's house and I seen a dog's leg there. So do you know what it was? He used to feed the Alsatians up and get them nice and fat and then eat them. I made sure he didn't get any more animals.
Brigades from Morpeth, East Maitland and Maitland were called to the burning hay shed at 8 o'clock last night. The timber and iron shed was well alight. Thick black smoke hampered efforts to control the blaze. The 3 brigades gained the upper hand around 1 o'clock this morning. 4 men and an engine were left to monitor the haystack, which was still burning at first light. 2 front-end loaders and an earth mover have been brought in to break up each of the 5,000 bales of hay. The damage has been estimated at nearly $30,000. A brigade spokesman says spontaneous ignition is the likely cause of the blaze. An official investigation is underway.
Peter Timmins was today's special guest at the Newcastle Business Communicators and Businessmen's Association lunchtime meeting. Mr Timmins, who spent 13 years as a career diplomat and who now acts as a consultant to nearly every Australian state government, says areas like Newcastle are competing in a crowded market and they must stand out and join together to be noticed by governments.
It seems to me government impacts on everyone's lives these days. That's one thing that's happened to us. It's pervasive and influences everyone, whether it's the corner store to big business. I think if people generally knew a bit more about government, they'd be a better place to get their story across.
Ministers rarely go against the advice they receive from their committees, so public servants become the ears and eyes of the government. Mr Timmins says communication is a huge hurdle, yet it pays dividends if attempted confidently and the right government departments are approached.
Well, I think Australia needs a couple of things at the moment. It needs very sound economic development, which is environmentally sensitive. And I think most people in business would recognise that that's the long-term future for them and for Australia. But I think they're very ineffectual in telling their story about that.
The visit by Cabinet follows an invitation issued by the Lake Macquarie City Council last year. While here, Cabinet members will be advised on matters of local importance. Council officers are preparing a submission detailing at least 10 areas of concern, in particular roads and environmental issues. These will include lake management and foreshore parks such as Green Point and Bolton Point. Cabinet will meet at the Lake Macquarie Council chambers.
The Port of Newcastle is unique in its proximity to rural New South Wales. Within kilometres of a busy industrial setting is a belt of primary industry worth countless millions of dollars to Australia. Just one foreign disease could cause untold damage to fragile vineyards, fine horse studs, dairies and grazing land. Standing between them and agricultural disaster is the Customs Service and the Department of Agriculture's quarantine section. Quarantine officers say the hunter is fortunate that Newcastle is predominantly an export port. Most of its imports are connected with secondary industry. Anything destined for the country is scrupulously examined. Quarantine officers say they never know what to expect. This load of 4,500 tonnes of soybean meal contained more than it should have. Samples revealed several tonnes of corn kernels and wild burrs accidentally mixed up with the consignment. The stakes in quarantine control are almost incredibly high. One corn kernel like this has the potential to wipe out Australia's corn industry. It's been a long time since anything slipped into the environment through the port, but it has happened. Dairy farmers threatened by alligator weed in the Stockton district know only too well that the noxious plant turned up early this century after being dumped on our shores in ballast from South American coal ships. The Quarantine Service believes it has a good system, but its officers can't defend the country against an act of wanton sabotage or plain ignorance. Any crewman walking off any foreign ship in this port could be importing agricultural destruction. The quarantine officers rely on and work closely with customs officers in detecting livestock and plants aboard vessels. It's impossible to imagine that the Department of Agriculture isn't concerned by the questions raised by the Customs Service's own officers.
Quarantine officers only work day work hours, that's until 5 p.m. each day, and then they're on a on-call basis, and therefore we're the eyes and ears for those people after hours. So if you take us away, there's also a quarantine risk for the valley.
Whether they're right or wrong, the customs officers have made their point. The debate raging within the Customs Service will have an effect not only on Newcastle, but ultimately the whole of the state. I'm Tom Hilston for NBN News.
$250 children up to Year 6 were given sponsor cards and most returned with at least $4. $942.96 was raised in half an hour by the Danceathon to aid Stewart House. And the children are aware of why they are raising the money.
We raised it to help support Stewart House because the government doesn't support them and all their money comes from schools.
School captain Philip King says it wasn't a hard job because everyone was asked to perform some of their old favourite routines.
There's the birdie dance, hokey pokey, just dances that we had some girls that were up the front just gave us dance routines to the dancers.
Joining in the spirit of the day were most of the teachers who dressed up and swung a leg in the name of charity. Darren Curtis for NBN News.
After 10 years, the National Basketball League has become the success story of the 80s in Australia, due mainly to the American influence in the early days. But now the Australian players are providing the backbone of most NBL teams, and the performance of the Australian Boomers is testimony to how the standard has improved in the land of Oz. However, there is always the need to develop the game further, something that the Newcastle Falcons are acutely aware of. Their star players, such as Peter Harvey and Michael Johnson, are taking the game to the schools, where the future of Newcastle basketball will come from.
Well, it's very important for not just the kids of Newcastle, but also for the Falcons. It helps our public image, and it also helps scout out potential Falcons of the future. Instead of having to get into a recruiting war as such with other states, we can actually get from our backyard, and that would be a bonus.
Former player and schoolmaster at Newcastle Grammar Jerry Prieto is delighted at the interest shown by the Falcons.
It's a really big lift for these kids because these boys are the ones that they see on television. They're the ones that they see at the Falcons games. These are the real professionals, and they come down and they speak the kids' language. They're down there doing all the basics with them. They're showing them cute little drills with the ball that the kids are having a great time trying. But more than that, they show them all the basics, the real basic techniques.
At the Sports Entertainment Centre tomorrow night, Michael Johnson's thoughts will be focused entirely on beating the NBL leaders and defending champions, the Canberra Cannons.
Every game for us now is a big game. We've lost 7 games and only won 2. We're starting to put it together. Obviously they're the NBL champions, so it's a big challenge for us. But you know, we made that challenge 2 weeks ago against North Melbourne, so we just got to step up another rung, and you know, we're pretty confident.
Around 80 people attended the meeting held late yesterday at Wallsend. Speakers voiced their concerns about the floodgates at Ironbark Creek near Hexham. The gates are now closed, but some, like Brian Gilligan of the Shortland Wetlands Centre, fear if the situation remains unchanged, serious problems could arise.
The water quality is deteriorating already. We have people saying that they used to swim in the creek, they no longer want to swim in the creek. People talk about the fish they used to catch in the creek. We have the Fisheries Department expressing concern about the loss of the creek system as a valuable fish nursery area. The State Pollution Control Commission expressing concern about the build-up of nutrients and so on in the area. We have the mosquito control people from Newcastle City Council saying, gee, in those stagnant waters that aren't properly flushed, we're getting major mosquito problems that are being caused by the fact that the creek isn't being properly flushed. So wrap it all together and it's a recipe for a degraded system that's going to continue to degrade.
He supports the study into the management of the creek, but believes it should be flushed.
There are all sorts of partial openings of the gates. The gates might be able to be opened for short bursts now and then, levee banks to protect some areas of farmland and additional floodgates further upstream. There are a whole suite of possible alternatives.
He says 3 areas must be considered for protection: low-lying urban areas from flooding, farmers' land interests and the creek itself. Wallsend Chamber of Commerce President Leone Bagnall told the meeting of the Chamber's concern about flooding if the gates were opened.
Well, they do talk about a 1 in 100 year flood. Well, I think we had that last April last year, and that was quite a frightening situation. I was here at 11:45 and the water was satisfactorily contained within the canal. Within 15 minutes we had a full flood.
She says any opening of the floodgates could make the situation much worse, but the Chamber would go along with opening them to flush the creek if it could be proven there was no risk. For that reason, she also supports the catchment management study. Following the meeting, local and state authorities will prepare a total catchment management plan to present to the Newcastle City Council within the next 3 months.
Many of the aspiring racers were at the track at Tomago this morning preparing for the 1989 Caravan Derby, a wild race between stock cars towing a caravan. A full field of 15 will greet the starter, and the drivers will need to have their wits about them to compensate for the extra weight that they are hauling. Many spectacular spills are expected.
Flying around, looping the loop and defying the ground.
Tomorrow the Balmain Tigers clash with South Sydney, and on Sunday Canberra meet Brisbane in the match of the day. In other matches on Sunday, Western Suburbs are at home to Cronulla, Manly tackle the informed St George Dragons at Brookvale, and Penrith play Eastern Suburbs at Panther Park. On the local scene, Maitland and Curry clash tomorrow, and on Sunday Western Suburbs do battle with Waratah, Cessnock play Toronto, Central meets Lakes United, and South Newcastle and North Nelson Bay tangle in the match of the round. To rugby union this weekend, Maitland play Port Hunter, Hamilton meet Wanderers, Bullaroo clash with Merewether Carlton, the Waratahs and Mayfield East clash, and Nelson Bay meet competition leaders University. Tonight the Newcastle Falcons are up against the defending champions of the NBL and current competition leaders, the Canberra Cannons, in what should be an explosive contest. Canberra will rely on Phil Smythe and Jamie Kennedy, along with Willie Simmons and Emery Atkinson to provide the firepower, while the Falcons again will look for Michael Johnson and Jerry Everett. And tomorrow night, the Kennard Hunters are at home to Gippsland. Newcastle Australs face another tough test this weekend when they entertain Warringah Freshwater at home. Australs went down to the brilliant Canberra side 2-1 last Sunday, but the Newcastle camp is confident of success against the defensive visitors from Sydney. And How's That Sport and Fitness World will celebrate their 5th birthday with a huge aerobathon at the Newcastle foreshore on Sunday. Marmy's Girl rounded off her preparation for the race with a fast finishing third to Zilla in an Eagle Farm flying on Saturday last. Stewart Plain was aboard Marmy's Girl when she won the Minister for Transport Stakes 12 months ago, and he will ride the mare again tomorrow. For the trifecta, which is race 5, Gary Harley likes Marmy's Girl to beat Shazura and Kristen. And for the legs of the daily double, Roulard in the first and Mirabin in the second are Gary's fancies. Veteran stayer Sasha Bijou will attempt to complete a hat-trick when he humps the steadier of 58.5 kilograms in tomorrow's McWilliams Wines Cup at Randwick. Sasha Bijou, partial to rain-affected going, carried 57.5 kilos to outclass a similar field by 3 lengths at Rosehill on June 3rd, and a rise of only 1 kg should see the grey first past the post again. Add Mighty Willem and Scarlet Guest to Sasha Bijou for your trifecta, and for the legs of the daily double, try Sasha Bijou and Spinnaker Bay. At Beaumont Park tomorrow, Gary Harley feels that Alcasal can reverse the last start defeat at the hands of Sports Store and win race 9, which is the trifecta race. For third, Gary likes Biff's Blue, and the legs of the daily double should see Alcasal win the first leg and Jekyll the second. They are trotting at Cessnock tomorrow night, and Gotham Express and National Fox are favoured by the big fella in the legs of the daily double, and for the trifecta, 9, 7 and 4, National Fox to beat Best Bachelor and Grancher. Doesn't come off. Dennis to Chris Dill with a fast break inside to Michael Johnson. 2 points. Cannons. Looking to go all the way, Duffelmeyer. That's great play by... Out to Chris Dill once again. Goes for the shot again. He's been very successful with that shot there to 9 points. Duffelmeyer out to McGeechan. Clever pass. Plenty of time, McGeechan, to take the shot.
Dennis, if they're isolating Jerry Everett. So he's making...
Up by Daffelmeyer. Quick break down the court. He'll go all the way. Doesn't get... Oh! Big slam by Emery Atkinson.
They've got every chance of winning this game.
Bill Jones. Great hook shot from Billy Jones. Breaks out now. Knocked away by Atkinson. Here's a go. All the way. Look out, Ring. Yes, man. Take it out of that lot. Picked up well, too. They break out inside to Everett. Takes the jig. Outfoxes Simon Cottrell and gets a great 2 points.
And what...
In March, Health Minister Peter Collins made a special trip to Newcastle to pacify worried locals over the seriousness of the Legionella scare. Mr Collins said high standards were being maintained in New South Wales hospitals. 3 months later, Department of Health inspectors have moved into Wallsend Hospital to try and find the source of the latest outbreak. Representatives from Wallsend Hospital would not talk with NBN News today. However, Hunter Area Service Chief Owen James did confirm 3 cases of the disease in the hospital. Dr James said the patients are all in the high-risk elderly group and all are women. The 26 different types of Legionella bacteria thrive in man-made water carriers such as air conditioning cooling towers and warm water delivery systems. Dr James says no link has been discovered with the Wallsend patients, although one could have caught the disease before she entered hospital. Peter Ryan for NBN News. Bill Bowmore's gallery come home was empty today of his personal and international treasures. Mr Bowmore has donated the collection, which contains hundreds of pieces, to Newcastle City. It was not a hard decision, he says, as art belongs to the people.
All good art does eventually end up in a public gallery where it really does belong too.
Described as priceless by Bowmore and valued by others in the tens of millions, the collection is to be re-established in the old bank building in Hunter Street West. It's not every day you see classic Rodin and Couturier sculptures on the back of a truck. But how do the removalists feel about carrying such precious cargo?
Nervous, to say the least.
More of the Bowmore collection will come from England and France, with the next step the restoration of the new gallery. With a 74-year-old daughter and a 50-year-old grandson, May celebrated with a favourite glass of white wine and birthday cake in her Merriweather home. Born in 1887, May left school at 15 and worked as a tailor. After marrying her husband Jack, they ran a farm together in Sydney's Bankstown. There's not too many farms left in Sydney, but there's plenty of Collivers. May has 2 children, 8 grandchildren, 12 great-grandchildren, plus 5 great-great-grandchildren. With a little brother nearly 101, longevity is obviously a family trait.
Happy birthday, honey May. Happy birthday to you. Hip, hip, hooray! Hip, hip, hooray!
Mr Devison, the man credited with having turned Nissan around in its highly competitive industry, was in Newcastle today to gather first-hand reaction to Nissan's winter marketing campaign from dealers. Mr Devison says despite downturns in some areas, the Newcastle and Hunter Valley region has been constantly improving.
We've been very, very pleased with the entire state of New South Wales and the Hunter Valley in particular, where we've achieved around 40% growth one year after the other, and we're looking for another 20% this year. I'm very pleased with the dealer performance in the area.
Overseas companies have made huge inroads into the Australian motor industry, making competition intense from production through to sales. Mr Devison believes Australian companies are now making more complex parts, helping to stem the imports tide, and that the current hard economic times will not stop people buying new cars.
I have to say there has been price stability, particularly over the last 9 to 12 months, where vehicle manufacturers have maintained prices below the CPI.
The marching koalas have become an institution in Newcastle and have gained quite an international reputation. In 1983, 85 and 87, the troupe has toured, with the last trip a busy series of concerts in England. This time the pace will be more leisurely.
We've got only about 8 playouts over there. It's really a big holiday, I think. A lot of fun.
Philip Miles and Elizabeth Geddes say they are looking forward to the next 3 weeks, which will involve shows at the Calgary Stampede and Disneyland. But for Elizabeth, the main task is simply to be a good ambassador for the Hunter.
To show the Americans what Newcastle is like, Americans and Canadian people, what Newcastle children can do, like school children can do.